I watched through my mother's bedroom window as my aunt's silver SUV rolled into the driveway, followed by a moving truck. My mother had been dead for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And here was my Aunt Carol, my mom's younger sister, pulling up to the house I'd just inherited with an entire moving crew, like she owned the place. Like my grief was just an inconvenience she had to work around. I felt my hands start to shake. That familiar tightness gripped my chest, the same suffocating feeling I'd had at the funeral when she'd cornered me by the casserole table and said, with this sickeningly sweet smile, "You know, sweetie, this house is far too much for a young woman like you to handle alone." But here's what Aunt Carol didn't know. I wasn't standing at that window alone, and I wasn't unprepared, because while she'd been busy planning her little heist, I'd been making a few calls of my own. If you've ever had a family member try to take advantage of you during the worst moment of your life, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and buckle up, because this story is about standing up to entitled family members who think grief makes you weak. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old, and until a month ago, my life was normal. Good, even. I had a marketing job I loved, a small apartment downtown, and most importantly, I had my mom. My mom, Linda, was my best friend. I know everyone says that, but with us, it was true. After my dad walked out when I was 12, it was just the two of us against the world. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college, never complained, never made me feel like a burden. She was everything. And then, one Tuesday morning in September, she didn't show up for our weekly coffee date. I called. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. That cold, creeping dread started in my stomach. I drove to her house, the beautiful craftsman-style home she'd finally paid off after 30 years. The one she'd poured her heart into, with the garden she tended every weekend and the reading nook by the bay window where she'd spent countless afternoons. I found her there, in that reading nook, a book open on her lap. She looked peaceful, like she'd just fallen asleep. Massive heart attack, the coroner said. Instant. She didn't suffer. But I did. Oh God, I did. The funeral was a blur. I moved through it like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. People hugged me, said meaningless things like, "She's in a better place," and "Time heals all wounds." I nodded, smiled weakly, played the part, but I wasn't really there. Part of me had died in that reading nook too. My mom's family showed up, of course. Most of them I barely knew. She'd been estranged from a lot of them for years after some drama I'd never fully understood. But death has a funny way of bringing people out of the woodwork, doesn't it? And then there was Aunt Carol. Carol was my mom's younger sister by 5 years. Where my mom had been warm, genuine, hard-working, Carol was the opposite. She'd married rich at 23, a real estate developer named Tom, and had spent the last 20 years cultivating this persona of suburban perfection. The big house, the luxury cars, the designer clothes. But here's the thing about people like Carol. It's never enough. They always want more. I was standing by the refreshment table, forcing down a stale cookie because I hadn't eaten in 2 days, when Carol materialized beside me. She was wearing head-to-toe black, but somehow made it look like a fashion statement. Her perfume hit me first, something expensive and overwhelming. "Sarah, honey," she cooed, placing a manicured hand on my arm. "How are you holding up?" I opened my mouth to give some generic response, but she didn't wait. "You know, I've been thinking," she continued, lowering her voice like she was sharing some deep wisdom. "That house is far too much for a young woman like you to handle alone. The maintenance, the property taxes, the upkeep, it's a burden, really." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was going. "Your mother and I talked about this, actually," she said, and my blood went cold. "She always said she worried about you being overwhelmed by it. I think it would be best if Tom and I took over the property. We'd give you fair market value, of course. Well, maybe a bit under, considering the repairs it needs, but—" "Carol." My voice came out sharper than I intended. My mother left the house to me, in her will. Her smile tightened, just slightly, but I saw it. Oh, sweetie, I know, but wills can be complicated and contested, especially when there's questions about, well, about undue influence. She squeezed my arm, her nails digging in just a little. Your mother was sick, dear. Who knows what she was thinking in those final months? My mother hadn't been sick. She'd been perfectly healthy until her heart gave out. I appreciate your concern, I said, pulling my arm away. But the house is mine. I'm keeping it. Something flickered across Carol's face. Something cold and calculating. The mask slipped just for a second. We'll see about that, she said sweetly. Then she walked away, leaving me standing there with my half-eaten cookie and a growing sense of dread. That should have been the end of it, right? I'd told her no, case closed. But Carol wasn't the type to accept no. The calls started the next day. At first, they were concerned. She was just checking in, making sure I was okay, asking if I'd thought more about her offer. I ignored them. Then the texts started. Long, rambling messages about how I was making a mistake, how I was being emotional and not thinking clearly, how she only wanted what was best for me. I blocked her number. Then came the emails, the Facebook messages, the calls from her husband Tom with his smooth salesman voice trying to reason with me. I blocked all of them. But here's the thing about entitled people. They don't understand boundaries. To them, your no is just an obstacle to overcome. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was at the house, sorting through my mother's things. This was the hardest part. Harder than the funeral. Harder than signing death certificates and canceling subscriptions. Every item I touched held a memory. Her favorite coffee mug, the blanket she'd crocheted while watching Grey's Anatomy, her reading glasses, still sitting on the side table. I was crying into a box of old photo albums when I heard a key turn in the front door lock. My head snapped up. The door opened and Carol walked in. Just walked right in, like she owned the place. Carol? What the hell are you doing? I stood up, my heart hammering. She held up a key. Your mother gave me a spare. Years ago. That doesn't give you the right to just, Sarah, we need to talk. She set her designer purse down on my mother's coffee table. You've been avoiding me. Because I already told you no. You're not thinking straight, she said, her voice taking on that condescending tone that made my skin crawl. You're grieving. You're not in a state to make major life decisions. That's why I'm here. To help you. By stealing my house? Her eyes went cold. Don't be dramatic. I'm offering to buy it. And I'm telling you it's not for sale. We stood there, staring at each other. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was trying to figure out her next move, how to manipulate this situation to her advantage. Fine, she finally said. Have it your way. But you're making a huge mistake, Sarah. And when this all falls apart, when you can't afford the taxes and the maintenance and you lose everything, don't come crying to me. She grabbed her purse and left, but she kept the key. I should have changed the locks right then, but I was so tired, so emotionally drained. I just couldn't deal with one more thing. That was my first mistake. The next week was quieter. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I should have known Carol was just regrouping. I spent that week taking care of practicalities, meeting with my mother's lawyer, a kind older man named Robert Chen who'd helped her set up her estate. He reviewed everything with me. The will was ironclad. The house, my mother's savings, her life insurance, all of it came to me. My mother had been very clear. Has anyone contacted you about contesting the will? Robert asked during our meeting. My aunt made some vague threats, I admitted. He nodded knowingly. I've been doing this for 35 years. Family estate disputes are common. But I want you to know, your mother's will is rock solid. She was of completely sound mind when she drafted it. We have documentation, medical records, witnesses. If your aunt tries to challenge this, she won't get anywhere. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because I knew Carol. She wasn't going to challenge the will through proper legal channels. That would take too long, cost too much money, and might actually fail. No, Carol was going to do something else, something more direct. I just didn't know what, yet. It happened on a Saturday morning, exactly 3 weeks after my mother's death. I'd spent the night at the house. I'd been doing that more often, sleeping in my old childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories. It felt closer to her somehow. Like if I stayed there long enough, I might wake up and find this was all just a nightmare. I was in my mother's room, going through her jewelry box, when I heard vehicles pulling into the driveway. Multiple vehicles. My stomach dropped. I went to the window and looked out, and my blood ran cold. Carol's silver SUV, and behind it, a moving truck. A full-sized moving truck with Tom's Premium Moving Services printed on the side. I watched, my hands trembling, as Carol got out of her SUV. She was dressed casually, in jeans and a t-shirt, like she was just moving into a new house. Like this was normal. Tom got out of the passenger side. 3 guys climbed out of the moving truck. And Carol? She walked straight up to the front door with that same key she'd used before, ready to let herself in. That's when something inside me snapped. All the grief, all the exhaustion, all the fear, it crystallized into something else. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. How dare she? How dare she show up with movers while I was still mourning, while my mother's ashes were barely cold? But here's the thing, I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done being pushed around. Done being dismissed as too young or too emotional or not thinking clearly. Because while Carol had been busy planning her little moving day, I'd been planning too. 3 days earlier, after my meeting with Robert, I'd made a call to Detective Maria Rodriguez with the local police department. We'd gone to high school together. She'd come to my mother's funeral, and I'd told her everything. Every harassment call, every threatening text, Carol's unauthorized entry into the house, her attempts to coerce me into selling. If she shows up again, Maria had said, you call me immediately. What she's doing? It's illegal. At minimum, it's trespassing and harassment. Potentially, it's attempted fraud or intimidation. What if she tries something bigger? I'd asked. Maria had looked at me seriously. Then we'll be ready. So when I saw that moving truck pull up, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront Carol. I pulled out my phone and called Maria. She's here, I said quietly, with a moving truck. Don't engage, Maria instructed. We're 5 minutes away. Stay inside, lock the doors, record everything you can. I hung up and did exactly that. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and watched through the window as Carol approached the front door. She tried her key, but this time, the lock didn't turn. Because I had changed the locks. 2 days ago, after my conversation with Maria, I watched Carol's face contort in confusion, then frustration. She tried the key again. Nothing. She knocked. Loud, aggressive banging. Sarah! Sarah, open this door! I didn't move, just kept recording. Tom came up beside her. They had a heated, whispered conversation. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. Tom wanted to leave. Carol was insisting they continue. Then, Carol did something that made my blood boil. She turned to the movers and said, loud enough for me to hear through the window, "It's fine. The door's stuck. Just, we'll go through the back. I have another key." She was lying to the movers, making them think this was legitimate. The group started walking around the side of the house, toward the back door. That's when I heard them. Sirens, getting closer. Carol heard them too. She froze mid-step, her head whipping toward the street. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Maria got out of the first one, along with her partner. 2 more officers emerged from the second car. The look on Carol's face? That moment of dawning realization? It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I came out onto the front porch, phone still recording. "Officers!" Carol's voice immediately shifted into that sweet, innocent tone. "Thank goodness you're here. There's been a misunderstanding. My niece, she's not well. She's..." "Ma'am?" Maria's voice cut through Carol's performance like a knife. "I'm going to need you to step away from the house. I don't understand. This is my sister's house. I'm family. This house belongs to Sarah Martinez," Maria said firmly. "You're trespassing." "Trespassing? That's absurd. I'm her aunt. I have a key." "An unauthorized key to a property you don't own," Maria corrected, "that you've used without permission to enter the home on at least one prior occasion. And now you've arrived with a moving truck attempting to remove property that doesn't belong to you." The color drained from Carol's face. Tom, sensing this was going very, very wrong, tried to intervene. "Officer, surely this is just a family matter. We can work this out without—" "Sir, this isn't a family matter. This is a criminal matter." Maria looked at the moving truck guys. "Did she hire you to move items from this property?" The lead mover, a burly guy in his 40s, shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, she said it was her house. Said she needed help moving her stuff into storage while she renovated." "So she lied to you," Maria said. "This isn't her house. She doesn't own any property here. She's attempting to steal from her niece." "What?" The mover looked horrified. "Lady, we don't do illegal moves. We're a legitimate business." Carol's mask was fully off now. "This is ridiculous. Sarah, tell them. Tell them this is just a misunderstanding." All eyes turned to me. I stood there on my mother's porch, on my porch, and looked Carol straight in the eye. "You've harassed me for 3 weeks," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "You've called me emotional and unstable. You've tried to manipulate me into giving up my inheritance. You've let yourself into this house without permission. And now you showed up with movers to literally steal my mother's belongings while I'm still grieving her death." My voice broke on that last word, but I pushed through. "So no, Carol, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is you trying to take advantage of your dead sister's daughter, and I'm done pretending it's anything else." The silence that followed was deafening. Carol's face cycled through emotions so fast it was almost comical. Shock, anger, desperation, and finally, fear. Because she was realizing, maybe for the first time in her entitled life, that there would be consequences. "Ma'am," Maria said to Carol, "you have 2 options. You can leave now, voluntarily, and Ms. Martinez can decide if she wants to press charges. Or we can arrest you right now for trespassing, attempted burglary, and harassment." "Arrest? You can't. I'm not a criminal," Carol sputtered. "Then I suggest you leave, now." Tom was already backing toward their SUV. "Carol, let's go, now." But Carol couldn't help herself. She took a step toward me, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful little bitch," she hissed. "After everything your mother—" "Don't." My voice came out as a growl. "Don't you dare talk about my mother. You didn't care about her when she was alive. You're not here because you loved her. You're here because you wanted her house." "Pff, this isn't over," Carol spat. "Yeah," I said, feeling stronger than I had in weeks. "It is." Maria stepped between us. "Ma'am, if you don't leave immediately, you will be arrested." Tom physically grabbed Carol's arm and pulled her toward the SUV. She resisted for a moment, then seemed to realize she'd lost. They got in the vehicle. The moving truck was already backing out of the driveway, the crew clearly wanting nothing to do with this mess. As Carol's SUV pulled away, she stared at me through the window. Not with sadness or shame, just pure hatred. I watched until they disappeared down the street. Then my legs gave out. Maria caught me before I hit the porch floor, helped me sit down. "You okay?" she asked gently. I started laughing, crying and laughing at the same time, this hysterical release of tension that I couldn't control. "I can't believe she actually showed up with a moving truck," I gasped between sobs and laughter. "People like her always think they'll get away with it," Maria said. "They're so used to bulldozing over others that they can't imagine someone actually standing up to them." "What happens now?" I asked. "That's up to you. You have everything documented, her harassment, the unauthorized entry, today's attempted theft. You have grounds for a restraining order at minimum. Criminal charges if you want to pursue them. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to throw the book at her, to make her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. But another part of me was just tired. The restraining order, I said. I want her to stay the hell away from me, but I don't have the energy for a long legal battle. I just want to grieve my mom in peace. Maria nodded. I understand. We'll file the paperwork Monday morning. The restraining order was approved within a week. Carol was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me and the property, with no contact of any kind. She violated it once, leaving a nasty voicemail on my work phone. Maria paid her a visit, and apparently the threat of jail time finally got through to her. I haven't heard from her since. The rest of the family? Most of them disappeared back to wherever they'd come from. A few of my mom's cousins reached out, genuinely kind people who'd had their own issues with Carol over the years. They weren't surprised by what she'd done. Carol's always been like that, one of them told me. Your mom was the good one, the kind one. Carol resented her for it. I'm still in the house, my mother's house, my house. I've been slowly going through her things, keeping what matters, donating what doesn't. I repainted the living room. I planted new flowers in the garden. I sit in her reading nook sometimes with a cup of tea, and I talk to her. I tell her about my day, about the house, about how I stood up to Carol. I think she'd be proud. The grief hasn't gone away. I don't think it ever really will. But it's different now. Less suffocating, more like a weight I'm learning to carry. And every time I walk through the front door, every time I see those locks I changed, I remember something important. I'm stronger than I thought I was. And nobody gets to take advantage of me just because I'm grieving. My mother didn't raise a victim. She raised a fighter. And when Aunt Carol showed up with that moving truck, she found out the hard way. Some people think grief makes you weak, makes you vulnerable, an easy target. They're wrong. Sometimes grief burns away everything except what's essential, your strength, your backbone, your understanding of what actually matters. Carol learned that lesson the hard way, didn't she? If this story gave you chills, smash that like button. And I mean really smash it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to deal with entitled family members during a difficult time? How did you handle it? And of course, subscribe for more stories about standing up, fighting back, and never letting anyone take advantage of your kindness. You won't regret it.